Welcome to Classic 4x4, the podcast for and by classic four-wheel drive enthusiasts. I'm your host, Chris Piccone, and you can follow the podcast on Instagram and Facebook at classic4x4_trucks. Also, make sure you subscribe to the show on your podcast listening platform and check out our website at classic4x4.com. And make sure to reach out to us if we can help you sell your classic, custom, and modified truck or 4x4. Well, hello, Classic 4x4 podcast listeners. We are in season 3 and we have made it to episode 9. Today's guest is a guy that is a specialist and one of the largest dealers of, hey, I'm just going to call them mini trucks because I don't really know how to pronounce what they are. Everybody says something differently. It's K trucks, Kei trucks, Kei trucks. You want to know something? Let's just keep it easy. Mini trucks. So Todd Gatto from HVNY Imports is joining us today. Todd, thanks for joining us, man.
How we doing today, Chris?
Rockin', brother. So Todd and I have a pretty cool story. We go back about a year or 2 years. I got infatuated with K trucks for a while, and or mini trucks. We're gonna answer. I'm gonna ask you that question in a minute. But I'm ready. There aren't a ton of dealers out there, and ironically, one of the largest dealers happens to be in Goshen, New York, which is Todd's company, HVNY Imports. For all you listeners out there that don't know what HVNY stands for, it's for Hudson Valley, New York, which is absolutely beautiful area north of New York City, which is where Todd is based. But I reached out to Todd one day and he said, man, I'm 6'4", 300 pounds. Like, can I even fit in one of these things? And I will remember that conversation for the rest of my life because you guided me through every make and model and what made sense, what didn't make sense. And hey, I still haven't pulled the trigger on one. I eventually will, but I haven't done it yet. But I really appreciate you joining us today. As we all know, today, season 3 is all listener requested topics and guests. So this particular guest is actually requested by myself. And this topic actually parlays off of a topic we had in the earlier part of the season where we talked to Dan Weinberger from Japanese Classics, and he talked about JDM Classic 4x4s. But I got a lot of requests from listeners that wanted to hear not only about JDM Classic 4x4s, but also Kei, whatever we're going to call them, mini trucks, right? And I quickly realized that nobody does both really well. Either there's amazing classic JDM truck importers, or there are separately amazing Kei mini truck importers, right? So there are some dealers that do them well, that do both of them, but nobody really does them well. So that's why I wanted to break this up into 2 separate episodes and have Todd on this episode to talk about the mini trucks. So Todd, dude, how did you get started? Like, you're a young guy. Like, how did you just end up becoming one of the largest mini truck dealers in the country?
So at the time, we were running a transportation company that we still have to offer our in-house transportation, local delivery, nationwide shipping. But we figured out upon moving a load of these to upstate New York to a farmer that we just had to have one. Buying one turned into 3, and 3 turned into 50. It was an impossible process to stay away from. Bringing one to the gas station would have people trying to lure you back home to please let us buy it now. It was just one of those things that you knew what the path was.
That's awesome. And for all our listeners out there, you got to check out Todd's inventory online. It's hvnyimports.com. Also, if you don't follow him on all the social channels, make sure you do. It's hvny.imports because he posts some cool content of doing some pretty neat things, especially off-road with those K trucks, and then has a huge inventory, which these days, man, that inventory is moving. I'm on your website probably once a week, and I have to say that inventory is moving quick. You have a large inventory, but it is turning, and it is turning quick.
We appreciate that, the notice. Yeah, no, people have taken taken arms when it comes to these trucks. It's like a cult following now. Everyone understands that for the price that you could buy a K truck for, Kei Mini.
So let me ask that question then, right? So what is, like, I got to tell you, like, everybody has a different saying. Some people call them K trucks. Some people call them Kei trucks. Some people call them Kei trucks. Like, how do the Japanese actually pronounce it?
So I've heard it both ways in Kei and Kei and Kei and Kei. I've heard Kei and Kei to be the more Japanese way to say it. The K, the letter, is more the Americanized, as well as the mini truck is completely Americanized.
So settle it once and for all on this episode today. What are we going to refer them at? What are we going to refer to them as?
I think for the other three to sit back and for us to refer to them as mini trucks. So.
Okay, we'll call them mini trucks. That's super cool. So we'll call them mini trucks. And before I get into talking more about the history of them, because there's pretty cool history and the differences between them, which you're the expert in that space. I ask every single one of my guests the same thing. What was your first car or truck?
So my first truck was a 1999 Ford F-350 7.3 liter.
Oh, OBS. That's an OBS too. Where is that?
So the OBSs were the older. This is the 99 Power Stroke. These were the forged internals and the really nice motor, the 7.3 liter diesel. That's
super cool. That's awesome. And what do you daily drive today?
Today it is a 6.7 liter F-350. I stuck with the Ford.
Gotcha. So I guess you're a born and bred Ford guy when you're not in your mini truck.
Well, so we rely on them to move the mini trucks from the port. Mm-hmm. So we have Ford F-550s, we have Ford F-350s. The Fords are very reliable when it comes to heavy hauling of these little trucks. But around town here, in Goshen, New York, we drive a Suzuki Every, a Subaru Sandbar, everywhere, and people all see us moving around with the website on the side of the truck or all the stickers, and they're like, oh, there they are again.
And you have some pretty cool clients. Like, you have like amusement parks that use these mini trucks and minivans to move around and nimble. Like, you've done some pretty cool neat stuff.
Yeah. So locally, we have Legoland as one of our biggest clients with over 25 trucks purchased to date. And they use them for a multitude of just about anything you can imagine to move their people around, supplies, landscaping, road work, and just about move the figures throughout the park when the Lego builders build. So they really do. And then we have, everyone from a Subaru dealership that knows that the owner knows that it would be cool to have a Subaru Sandbar on the floor for people to see. And the Toyota dealership with a Daihatsu, it's because Daihatsu being a Toyota product, it really is something special for people to be able to find something to correlate this with.
That's cool. So before we go into the differences between all those mini trucks, it's interesting. I was doing a little research today, and I didn't realize that there were different generations. Like, this is like, so in Japan, I guess the term is kaitora, which translates roughly to light truck in Japanese, correct?
Correct.
So that's where the slang Kei or K or Kei, whatever we want to call it, the KEI slang comes from.
Right.
And this was actually it's a classification of vehicle over there that started in 1949 and has evolved. But like from 49 to 75, they were 360 cc, and then from 76 to 1990, they bumped them up the classification to 550 cc. And what we all think of as really a mini truck is what you specialize in, which is the 1990 to 2014 660 cc's, right?
Yeah, a little bit better of a motor there, a lot more powerful. We actually specialize in the 90s and mostly carbureted, 660 cc gasoline carbureted unit. It's diehard. You can leave it alone and come back to it without worry. Tune-ups are cheap. It really is the evolved version.
That's super cool. And I know in 2014 they completely changed in Japan. They changed the classification. They got rid of all the incentives around it. So there are modern mini trucks, micro vans, mini cars, but like it's not as popular as it was when it, really peaked from 1990 to 2014, which is sad because we're not really going to see them anymore, once we kind of pass that 25-year roll on 2014, right?
The 90s was the last golden era for a lot of things as far as quality goes, too.
Gotcha. That's pretty cool, man. So, and these things, what do they weigh? Like, not too much, right?
Oh, light, 1,500 pound unit, a dump, maybe 1,750.
Which is like
light enough. Yeah, light enough that you could drive on your lawn in March and not destroy it like a Ram 1500 would, or even something small, a Ford Ranger, Dodge Dakota, a Chevy Colorado. They're all going to sink in the mud, in the backyard. And this thing's going to float on top.
Hey, you get the thing stuck. You and a couple buddies can just kind of pick it up and move it out, right?
If you get this thing stuck, send us a picture because we never see that.
Really?
It's really hard to get them stuck. I mean, with the anything outside of like a teeter-totter seesaw situation where it's just, it would be that like that for anyone. These trucks would drive up the side of a wall. It's ridiculous, the traction and the low-end gearing.
And I know they, this is from you, is a lot of them come with lockers, right?
Yeah, the Suzukis and Daihatsus especially, they'll have a diff lock in the 4 speeds and the climber models. Really dynamite option, although the 4-wheel drive in any of them has sufficed for everyone. But that diff lock is definitely the difference.
That's cool. And how many are you bringing in per shipment these days?
It changes. It depends on what they can fit on the boat and when they want to be nice. Mm-hmm. But, some months you could see a shipment of 35 and other months a shipment of 50. Some months they say, hey, we can only fit 14 and they break it up weird. But shipping has obviously changed the last couple of years where you're just at the mercy and happy it got here.
Yeah. Happy you can actually pick it up at the port, which is, I agree with you, man. I think all the importers are saying the same thing. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of this episode and talk about the differences between all these mini trucks, out there. Just so our listeners know, Mitsubishi makes a model called the Mini Cab. Subaru makes a model called the Sandbar. Suzuki, their model is the Carry. The Honda model is ACTY. Daihatsu is the Hijet, and then Mazda has a model also. I think it's rebranded. You'll tell us about that. So let's walk through each one of those models, right? The pros, the cons, what you like about them, what you don't like about them, who they make sense for. Sure. And I thought that'd be kind of fun. We'll do that not only through the trucks, but also the micro vans, some of the cars, and some of the JDM full-size right-hand drive cars that you're bringing in right now, there's some really cool stuff coming out of the late 90s, which it's timely. It makes sense. I'm excited to talk about that. So the Mitsubishi mini cabs, talk to us about them. What do you like? What do you not like? Who do they make sense for?
So the mini cab is a great unit. And I like that for the high-low transfer case in all of them. The 4-wheel drive, stout little peppy motor, still all of them being the 660 cc's, but the Mitsubishi just seems to have a little bit more snot, if you will. But great for someone that is going to be, using it around the farm, around town, something light, nothing extreme off-road madness, although they can still plow your driveway because the Mitsubishi did not come with a diff lock or axle lock applications. It's just the high-low transfer case and the 4-wheel drive. So bare bones, but reliable. I've never seen a broken one.
What about cab size? I speak from, hey, I'm 6'4", 300 pounds, right? So what about cab size? Am I fitting in this thing?
So it really depends on if you're more legs, more torso, and, the sizing, because I have a brother who's 6'4" or 6'3", and, he's a bigger boy on the heavier side, and he fits a little more snug, if you will. We got to slam the door on him, but he can still get in there, and which is cool. But for larger guys, larger people in general, I would direct you towards the Subaru. It's going to have the most cab space for Americans, usually. We're a little bit taller. The Subarus have more cab space. Then, each and every one of them has just a little bit less as you go down. And I would say probably the tightest for us that we've noticed is the Suzuki or the Honda. But then others say, hey, I'm a lot more legs, so the Honda works great for me. What we try to get everyone to do is come down to the lot, sit in all of them and see if any or all, because if 3 of them work for you, now it could be the differentiator of condition, or do you want a diff lock, or is it miles that we're after?
Gotcha. That's pretty cool. So you brought it up as the largest cab and the one that you recommended for me, which is the Subaru Sandbar. What do you like about them? What do you not like about them? I know there's I think a turbo model that people don't like. I forget. It's either a turbo or like fuel injected model that people don't like. Like, walk me through the Sandbars.
Supercharged Sandbar is the model that people chase, but when it blows up, they do not like. And, but it is a bit peppier, a few more horsepower on that little supercharger to the 660. It is fuel injected compared to the non-supercharged carbureted unit. But I would recommend a Subaru to larger people. More cab space, a rear mounted motor, so that takes the motor weight, brings it to the back with the human weight that we're carrying. Now we have, a little bit of an offset. I like the Sandbar because of the 4-wheel drive push button on demand, quick, easy. It doesn't have to be somebody that's maybe a off-road professional that is aware of lockers and how high-low transfer case works and axle lock, diff lock. Subaru, you just get in it. The 4-wheel drive button's right there on the shifter. It's more for the just getting into 4-wheel drive application person, but also a great road rider because of the rear mounted motor and independent rear suspension. I
did not realize that. I assumed they all had rear mounted motors. So which ones are some of them front mounted? Like, do they have a doghouse? Like the old school vans, or are they mid engine or?
Yeah, so the Honda is a midship motor, and then Daihatsu occasionally has like a front to mid mounted motor, but the rest of them, the rest of the Daihatsus, the Suzukis, and the Mitsubishis are all going to be front mounted motors. And, people say, oh, well, do you notice the heat in the summer, or, do you notice a traction loss from having all the weight in the front? And, no, not really to neither of those, but we can say that, of course, if you were to take a thermometer and put it in the cab, it's probably a few degrees warmer with a front mounted motor. We roll the windows down and we have tons of fun with them regardless.
So do these things actually have air conditioning as an option?
You can have an air conditioner as an option, but I joke with everyone and say, as well as the air conditioner will work on this tiny little unit, it will be most effective parked in the shade. So
that's pretty funny, man. So we've gone through the mini cabs, the Sandbars. Let's talk about the Suzuki Carries. Cause I think when people talk about mini trucks, that's what pops into their head is the Suzuki Carries. I think they're the most prominent out there. Why are they the most prominent? What do you like about them? Not like about them? What's some of the cool features they have?
So Carries, if I'm not mistaken, they had the most of those made, period. Suzuki Carry was the biggest mini truck production, period. Then the Carry offers the functionality of the axle lock and diff lock, high-low transfer case. Some of them have a 5-speed, but then you'll lose the diff lock and you'll lose the high-low transfer case a lot of times. But occasionally you'll find that rare model that has an extra low with a high-low transfer case and diff lock and a 5-speed. So you will find those very rare one-off combos. But Suzuki is the off-road monster. It's the epitome of you can't get it stuck with a good set of quad tires. It will drive up the side of a tree, over rock walls, through mud. If you check out our Instagram page, we've taken some personal trucks that we've lightly modified over the years. And I say lightly with 2-inch lift kit, sometimes a set of springs, and a good set of quad tires, or, any good off-road tire. And they truck. They truck well.
That's cool. I've seen a lot of those videos, and I'm amazed that you don't get these things stuck, which is, even more wild, but I guess that's why these things are just, they crush it.
Yeah, it can be done. You could drive over a 3-foot center section of mud and kind of top out and be
high centered a little bit,
high centered. But, outside of that, if you're paying attention to where the ditch is and mud is in your favor that day, you'll be just fine.
That's cool. So let's move on to the Honda ACTY, because I feel like this is one that's misunderstood, where people really, they see the Honda name, the ACTYs people know, but it's not always the best option, but people always want it, right?
I love them and I hate them. I like the all-wheel drive for someone that doesn't want to remember to switch the lever.
Mm-hmm.
I like the all-wheel drive I like the Honda because on the Attack models, you'll get a diff lock,
Mm-hmm.
and that diff lock with, the all-wheel drive situation there is actually, quite stout in the woods. Mm-hmm. You're not getting stuck in that with the right, tire. But at the same time, the Honda being all-wheel drive all the time, I don't like the idea from a mechanical standpoint of extra parts moving on the pavement. Mm-hmm. If you were in the pavement situations or, even just higher speeds for no reason. I prefer a two-wheel rear and to be able to click into four-wheel on demand when I want it, whether it be by push button, vacuum override or a lever with a cable. We love them and we hate them. Like I said, there is a good amount of people that'll find a Honda and say, I'm a Honda guy or a Honda girl, or, the Honda brand, it's known. And that's, the decision is made before they even know anything about it being all-wheel drive or anything like that, just based off of the Honda brand, which, it's not like they're going to blow up versus another brand. It's not like that one's going to get stuck versus the other brand because all of their four-wheel drive capabilities is up there. But the all-wheel drive all the time, it steers most of the mechanics away.
More metal that is moving and touching all the time is never a good thing. Now, is the ACTY, is that the only model that is full-time all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive? Do all the rest have a selectable dual-range transfer case?
Yes. So, and not all of them have the selectable transfer case, but for the ones that don't offer a transfer case, like the Subaru, say, mm-hmm. it offers an extra low gear on the transmission that does put you into a lower gear setting.
Gotcha.
So you could be in four-wheel drive, and that actually, when clicking into the extra low gear on the transmission, you're automatically locked into four-wheel drive on a Subaru.
Gotcha. That's pretty cool. That's good knowledge there. And let's go into one I think that is misunderstood, which I don't think people really understand how great of a mini truck it is, because I don't think they always connect the parent company. They just hear, Daihatsu Hijet, right? Not realizing that at the end of the day, it's a Toyota.
It's a Toyota right there, and it is a quality unit. It changes every couple months for me, mm-hmm. but right now Daihatsu is probably my favorite because I like the idea that you can get a 5-speed climber where it is rare and / non-existent for you to find a 5-speed diff lock, anything else. So to be able to get a Daihatsu 5-speed with a diff lock and a high-low transfer case, you really have the mechanical package there of every single thing you're going to get. And then if you threw air conditioning into that, then you'd have the ultimate truck, so to say.
That's cool. What about cab size on the Daihatsus?
So that is, for me, right in between. I'm 6 foot, so it's right in between Suzuki and a Mitsubishi, mm-hmm. as far as like sizing goes, which all three very similar, but the Suzuki being a little bit tighter for me.
Gotcha.
But Daihatsu, again, great truck. We can't say enough good things about Daihatsus. When they come in, we usually have the most people that are starting to do their research say, oh, that's a Toyota, is it not? Yeah, I'd like to see that one first, just because the Toyota brand really surpasses a lot.
Hey, I mean, it speaks for itself. I daily drive a Toyota. I'm on my 4th 4Runner right now. And man, I pound miles on these things, and I have done nothing but wearables: tires, brakes, rotors, wipers, and change some fluids, man. I knock on wood. There's a reason I daily drive a Toyota. And I'm a believer in the brand because there is never, knock on wood, never an issue with these things. They live up to their quality standards. But another brand, which is again underrated, especially in the passenger car market, which in the SUV market here in the US, but has some prominence in Japan. It's still kind of a 3rd-tier brand in Japan, but they do make mini trucks, which is Mazda. But I couldn't really find like what the model for Mazda is, or they just call it Mazda mini truck.
So it's called the Mazda Scrum,
okay.
SC. And the Mazda Scrum, yeah, it's pretty much a rebranded Suzuki Every. But we have one on the website right now. A lot of them did come axle lock, diff lock. Then that one on the website right now does have both. And, high-low transfer case. just as stout as a Suzuki, but because there was a lot less made and not as well of a, name call on the brand, it just didn't have the same popularity and go as far. But we do have mechanical people that'll research these for months and then say, I noticed the Mazdas are a bit cheaper. Do you have one? And they'll take that home and do the same exact thing that you can do in a Suzuki.
Gotcha. That's pretty cool. That's neat. So let's kind of wrap that up and say, all right, if size doesn't matter, right? If the size of the driver does not matter, you want the most capable, most reliable mini truck out there. What are you going with?
I'm going Suzuki Daihatsu.
Okay.
And I say that I still love the Daihatsu and we still love the Suzuki, but I'm going for the off-road capabilities first and then tying in that you can also take them on the street. But it's a compound answer if the person really just wants to be hitting the street, I would go Subaru.
Okay. Cool. That's cool. And then if size does matter of the driver, I think we already know the answer, but tell us again.
It's going to be Subaru. And then secondarily, you could try Daihatsu Mitsubishi because depending on the person, again, legs or torso being longer, the Mitsubishi or the Daihatsu might work better for them.
Gotcha. These things are super cool. I have to tell you. So a lot of our listeners know I live in a beach town about an hour south of New York City. And I started seeing these things pop up about 5 years ago where all the surfers were buying them, right? And what they were doing is they were using them as like their surf rigs. So say, a surfer lives, a couple blocks off the beach. You don't want to haul, you don't know what the surf is like, or like, hey, surf report's decent. I want my fun shape and my longboard, right? I don't like, hey, the water is kind of in between my, full suit or my spring suit or like a 3-4 or 5-6 wetsuit. Like, so these guys, it's the coolest thing, man. They use them as like their surf rigs to get from their house or wherever they live inland or a couple blocks off to the beach, right? So we have them running around our town. And I think that is the coolest use case where you have just a couple people with a few boards on top with their wetsuits hanging off the side and, their bags in the back. And that's how they get back and forth from the beach to their house. And it's a neat use case. A couple guys have them where they put like the big Texas Longhorn on the front, which I think is neat.
We have had the absolute wildest different types of businesses created based off of someone seeing these trucks. The shape of them just incites the thought process and ignites, I should say. And what it brings is that we have customers like a welding rig. We have customers that are using it for laundry, dry fold, pickup. We have customers that can't even drive the manual transmission aspect of it, but know it was the better of the two to buy over the automatic, had it dropped off in front of a deli. And now when people stop in and say, hey, what's going on with that truck there? The lady says, well, if you buy a sandwich and a drink, I'll tell you where I got it from. So, we have had everyone really just find something creative to do with these.
That's cool. And you actually just brought up a good point, which we should talk about: automatic versus manual, right? So which models are they all available in automatic and manual? What do you like? What do you don't like?
I would rather say it like this, is that the automatics are nowhere near as diehard as the manuals, which is true for, throughout the ages and all the countries, your manual transmission prevails. But these are geared so low that I can teach anyone, even if they've never driven a manual transmission before, how to get in one of these and go. It's user friendly. It's the better choice.
That's cool. So let's talk about the micro vans, which is, I think those things are awesome, right? Like they are super cool. Again, we have like one or two in a town where, some of the surfers use them instead of the micro truck or the mini truck. They use the micro vans, and all those manufacturers we just talked about with the mini trucks have a version which is a micro van, except for, I believe, Suzuki. They call their micro van the Every, right?
Yeah, Suzuki Every. And then you'll get the Subaru Sandbar and the Diaz. And then there is a few other variations of other models as well. but those vans are just dynamite little rigs as well. They, 4-wheel drive, all that extra room. It's enclosed. It's the van it's this truck with the van shell, and it has the 4-wheel drive capabilities. We've seen people accessorize them with, a wrap and wheels, and it looks like it's brand new, but people, that's a 1996? No way.
That's cool. So everything we just talked about for capability and size and all that stuff of the truck counterparts pretty much does that hold true with the microvans?
Yeah, we have some videos on our Instagram of the vans, doing their thing. I wouldn't put them in the same angles that I would the trucks, just because they're a bit more top heavy and I wouldn't want to roll one, but you have to go pretty extreme of an angle to roll any of this stuff with the weight and height that it is.
That's cool. So I guess with the vans though, are these things meant to just be like, haulers, or do you see them in different setups where they have seats in the back? Like, what are the setups you're seeing?
So, we've sold a few of them to Legoland, and they use them to bring their employees from the gate quarter mile up, and they go pick up 4 or 5 people, and then they come back and pick up 5 more, and they have 2 vans going back and forth with a driver. So an additional employee sits in the front with the driver in the passenger seat. So, we've seen the application be both, because I also have a construction company that bought 2 of them, and they do small jobs. They'll fill the back with wood and, do these very tiny little jobs. And then the unit is a catchy little piece of advertising outside of somebody's house while you're working on it.
That's a good point. I didn't really think about that, right? The advertising angle to it. But if these things are set up to maximize seating, right, in them, what's the most you can fit in a microvan?
So when it comes to bodies, I would say, like as many people, I would say that you can fit 5 people in the chairs they give you, the bench rear and the 2 front. You really could fit 5 people there. We've done it. And then if you wanted to put a rear facing bench, you probably could put 3 more in there. So, you could potentially fit 8 people in there, but weight rating wise, a lot of the trucks are recommended for 775 pounds or 375 or 350 kilograms. So 775 pounds, give or take. And they recommend that so you could stop at 40 miles an hour. But if you were just in your backyard, although it's against what their rating is, my suggestion would be that someone could easily do 1,000 pounds on flat level ground, moving around their yard without worry. And even then a bit more, depending on how you're loading it and what you're moving.
I didn't even think about that. You just brought up a great point. These things weigh 1,500 pounds. They have 660cc engines, but there's only so much they can carry. So on the trucks, right, on the mini trucks, is that 750 or 775 pounds, including the driver weight and payload capacity?
No, it's just in bed capacity. Okay. 775.
Gotcha.
Yep. 775 in bed capacity. But imagine this, right? A truck that weighs 1,500 pounds that can do a little more than half its weight in the bed.
Yeah.
If you could say that for all its American counterparts over here, my 350 included, that if we could put a little bit more than half of the truck weight in the bed, I wouldn't need any other truck or anything else really, but you can't do that with Americans.
That's completely wild to think about, right? That the payload capacity of these things is half of the actual weight with a 660cc engine, right?
Yeah. And it moves it around just fine. The gearing is what it's all about.
Gotcha. So back to the microvans, there's a lot of similarities between the microvans and the trucks. Just, they have a little bit different of a use case. But one thing that we've seen a lot recently is the Subaru Diaz, right? The Subaru Diaz, you have to walk me through this. For some reason, I don't know if there is a customizer in Japan or in somewhere else in the world that has decided that these things should look like Volkswagen microbuses from the 60s or the 70s. They were coming in, you saw them hot for a while, and then all of a sudden, you just saw articles left and right about how Volkswagen was not having it, Customs wasn't having it. So where are these things getting customized abroad or here? How did that whole thing play out?
So it was happening over there, mostly in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And what customs didn't like was that it came through clearly looking like a Volkswagen, but on the paperwork said Subaru.
Mm-hmm.
And for lack of the proper term, that's a no-no.
Mm-hmm.
And customs was either offering you to send it back to Japan, which means that, you'd have to have it defaced there and put back to stock and then sent back, which would cost probably more than what you're into the truck for. And you could just buy another one.
Mm-hmm.
And if you didn't go with that, they were crushing it. So that stopped. And we were looking at quite a few of them because everyone was asking us, hey, can you get one? Can you get one? Sure. And we were so close to pulling the trigger when all the articles were coming out, and we happy that we stayed away from it.
Gotcha. And I know this is like a common theme with the JDM importers is your success is based on volume. Right. It's purely on, if you bring 10 of these trucks in, like we talked about this with Dan Weinberger from Japanese Classics, right? He's like, hey, man, if I bring 10 of these things in, no matter how many CR reports I look at, my guys on the ground do inspections, at 1 out of every 10 of these things, I cannot resell. I have to break down for parts, which is great because he supports post-sale anyway, and the parts are useful. But do you see a similar thing? Like, when you're acquiring these out in wherever in Japan, right? And you're bringing them here, can you resell every one of them, or do a lot of them just not meet your quality standards?
For us, I would say that the number is probably more like 1 in 20.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, that 1 in 20, now you have a set of seats, a set of mirrors, a set of doors, a good set of rims, an axle, whatever you may need. But you may have a rotted piece of frame, or you may have a bed that's just destroyed, or a cab that has a little bit of rot on the door. And that may be the reason you don't want to sell it at all, So therefore, now a parts truck. But it's about 1 in 20, which still, even if it was 1 in 10, right? Those numbers, if you correlate it to like American vehicles that are 30 years old, you'd be lucky to find 1 in 100 still existing, not rotted out and destroyed.
Yep. That's a good point. I didn't really think about that. It's the ratio is better than here in the States. That's actually a really good point. That's thought provoking right there. But so what is the reconditioning that you do when these things ground? You go pick them up at the port. I don't know what port you're using. Is it Newark or Elizabeth?
We like to use Newark. Okay. Ports America in Newark. That's our favorite, close to home. We get there in less than 2 hours. Everyone knows us. We load up. We're happy to see us in and out of their way.
Yeah, port relationships are everything. I mean, with any importer, port relationships are anything, man, because you get a customs inspector that has you on his bad list, woke up that day, got in a fight with his wife, his kid got, suspended, man. And you could end up on the wrong side of that import transaction.
I got to bring a tray of eggplant down to Ron at the gate. I've been promising him for a year now. So I got to bring this tray of eggplant, because if he hears this and I heard you on the podcast, where's my tray of eggplant?
That's too funny, man. That's cool. So let's talk about the Kei cars, or the mini cars. Like, they're not as prominent. You don't see a lot of people bring them in. I don't think you bring them in too regularly, right?
Not too regularly. We've had, let's see, right now we have a Subaru Vivio, which is a supercharged front wheel drive manual little vehicle, 660K vehicle. And then we have a Suzuki Cappuccino, which is like the little Miata sports car-ish, lightning bolt little turbo. And then we've had some Suzuki Altos, which are also 660 turbos. And, all three of them in the K community, K-class vehicle, dynamite little cars, but not an ass for every seat like the truck. The functionality isn't as high. We have sold a little bit of each, we have a little bit of each to look at and choose from, but it's not as conducive as someone saying, oh, I want to commute, so let me get a Honda Civic, and it'd be right-hand drive, sure. Whereas this is a certain person wants to just do the little around town stuff and have the one-off look, because there's definitely not many of them.
Yeah, of course. And I get it. The use case is not as interesting. You know, if you're a contractor or you're Legoland or you're a surfer, you can't carry too much in them. You can't carry too many people in them. It's a limited use case, which I get. But a supercharged 660 engine in a vehicle that weighs like, I'm assuming, what are the mini cars or the Kei cars weigh? Are they less than 1,500? I'm assuming.
1,500 and less. And if you ever wanted to go for a ride, that is the one I'd suggest you come up and drive, Chris. The Subaru Vivio is a fun little car. And even with you being taller, we have a back seat. So that seat can go back and we can recline, and we're going to get you in there. That is the one that I think you would absolutely love to drive around.
That is like an absolute insane go-kart.
yeah. It's got the juice and it's usable and it doesn't feel like it's getting out of hand, probably because of its size, but it never feels like it's not controllable.
Cool. Which leads us into one of the last things we're going to talk about, which is an area. It's not essentially truck related, but it's hot right now. And yeah, we all, all the listeners on the Classic 4x4 podcast, we're here to talk about trucks, but they are also interested in anything with an engine that is mechanical. And this is an area which is really hot right now, which is right-hand drive. I don't want to call them mini because they're not. So they're JDM right-hand drive, full-size cars, right? And in going into the 90s and a lot of these things are really, there were a lot of really interesting JDM full-size right-hand drive cars in the 90s that now fit the 25-year rule. Not only cars, but also trucks. We've talked about on the podcast before the Mitsubishi Pajeros, which are hot, especially the Evolution
Dynamite
models.
Yes, but really stout.
But I want to talk about the Honda Civic and the Integra, I'm a 90s kid. I was in high school in the late 90s. And if you had a two-door Integra in the late 90s, or an Acura CL or TL, you were the man. You were like the man, dude. But there was a Japanese JDM version of that, which now qualifies as a classic that could be imported. Toyota has the Celica and the RAV4s, right? Yep. Let's talk about the Pajeros. We can talk about those forever and ever and ever. We've talked about them a lot on the podcast. I don't want to spend that much time on them, but they're hot right now. I'm sure you're getting a million calls on them. What's your take on those?
They're just unstoppable, bulletproof, off on road. As they're the one. It's like taking a mini truck and putting a humongous diesel motor in it. That same off-road capability, that same, manual transmission in a lot of them. We do have an automatic one right now on the website. We have a few manual transmission ones on the website. But center locking diff, or air ride adjustment suspension, adjustable
so crazy.
suspension. And we still don't have anything like that. And when we do get into stuff like that, say a Mercedes, you're spending $100,000+ on an SUV that you don't want to off-road it, even though it has air ride, or adjustable suspension. And even then it's not selectable. So it's just so amazing what they had there then that we didn't have and still don't have now.
Yep. And now what's the different models? So I know when people bring up Pajeros, they bring up the Evolutions. Everybody wants the Evolutions. You can't find them. They're doing wild numbers, right? 35, 40 grand. They're doing insane numbers. They just hit the 25-year rule. So what are the difference between just the standard Pajeros? Is there different models? And then what makes an Evolution?
So the Evolution motor is that Evo motor in there that people are spending that 35, 40, 60,000 for.
Insane.
And it's a sports car with, with a truck shell or an SUV shell. We've had one come over to, it's actually on our Instagram. Last year we had a import K Day kind of get together and someone showed up in one and talk about beautiful truck inside and out, spotless, beautiful, sounded great. We went for a ride. It was extremely fast, even faster than you'd imagine. But, that one in particular that the gentleman bought was a $50,000+ Pajero. So, for a lot of people that want to go into the off-road side of things and get into the Pajeros that are more woods friendly and more everyday drivability friendly and not so speedy, we have a gas one right now, a 3-liter gas that is really reliable. And then we have the diesels, the 2.8-liter diesels are really the popular one. And that's the same motor that's like in an excavator. So you can get parts for that motor for, if worried about parts availability on any of these trucks, Mitsubishi is still going strong. Mm-hmm. So are those motors in a lot of applications around the world. And sometimes we have to get clever, and we'll say, it's a 2.8-liter motor. We found out they make them in excavators. Boom, there's our oil filter.
That's pretty neat. So let's talk about the Honda Civics and Integras, because they are now they are, 25-year-old. They can come over here. They were hot in the 90s. And when we talk about there was the Honda Integra, but here, because they didn't have the Acura brand there, correct?
Yeah, no Acura brand there.
Mm-hmm.
Honda controls it all. And the Honda Integra, that, specifically the one we have right now, that's a SIRG model, and it has that nice 1.8 liter in it. It's the, it's the fast one. the thing is the little rocket ship, with still being like a family car. The one we have, a 4-door, offering a 4-door with a 1.8 liter 4-cylinder, good on fuel, still gets you around, does everything you need to do. And because it's a Japanese vehicle and sourced with pride, it came over in good condition. So you could get a vehicle that's less than 10 years old in the States and it's rotted out, depending on if it's in the Northeast or where you get it from. And then you have a vehicle from Japan 25 years later that you can eat off of the underside of these, the engine bays, immaculate.
That's cool. And what about the Civics? Are they like our Civics here? Same body, same shell, just different engine?
Yeah. Similar shells, similar engines, but in different applications. And then, you'll run into stuff like we recently had a Prelude, which, people will just forget about altogether because they don't make them anymore. But we recently had a Prelude cell, and we recently had 2 Del Sols cell with the trans top, the transforming top that grabs the fold away and goes into the trunk with it. It's been one of those things where we thought it was just going to be mini trucks, and we thought it was just going to be only 4-wheel drive stuff. And then we started doing some cars, and we had really good response and feedback. And now we have stuff like Toyota Serra that has the butterfly doors, and it's just really, really wild stuff that they had that, again, we, as Americans, the American market just didn't want to take a risk with anything cool looking at the time.
Yeah. And another hot car, like when in the late 90s, was the Celicas, right? And you're now getting right-hand drive Celicas from Japan. What's the hot seller with the full-size right-hand drive cars right now out of, the ones we just talked about, the Civic, the Integra, the Prelude, the Celica? Which is the one that people are coming after?
It's the one that we didn't get to that I still love and everyone knows is the Subarus. The Subaru Legacy Wagon, right-hand drive, twin turbo. It's the sleeper.
I get it though. I get it because that type of buyer wants something unique in the first place. And I can see why there's a parallel to the Subaru buyer right there.
Yes. Yep. And it really has been. We've sold probably 5 or 6 full-size Subaru cars this year. Mm-hmm. And maybe only 5 full-size Honda cars and 3 or 4 full-size Honda SUVs. And the Honda CRV too is also a big seller, just because everyone knows what the CRV is here. Mm-hmm. And then, it's from Japan. It's right-hand drive. It's super clean, low miles, and with a manual transmission. A lot of the ones you'll find here are automatic. So that really, having all these vehicles come with the availability of manual, when a lot of them weren't, or there's none left in manual here, that's cool. And then we also have a lot of people that say, I want right-hand drive, but I want an automatic. So we did buy a bunch of automatic.
That's cool. Excellent. And as we kind of get into the end here, let's talk about the reconditioning. These things ground, what are you putting them through? What's your inspection? Because I know when we first talked, a year or 2 ago, that was a big thing for you. And I'm sure it continues, but these things aren't perfect when they come off of the ship or when you're picking them up at the port. What are you putting them through? What are you doing in your shop?
So vigorous testing, that starts with, we're going to inspect the timing belt, the water pump, the tensioner. We're going to do and replace, and then we'll do a tune-up consisting of, on the mini trucks at least, spark plugs, cap, rotor, wires. We can do fuel, air, and oil filter along with an oil change. We'll drop the radiator fluid because 90% of the time it's water over there. And, we'll give the whole thing a once over. We'll check transmission fluid, rear diff level. We'll really inspect the whole truck. But what a lot of people, they'll come over and say, what are we doing for tires? And that's why we stopped, because for a long time we were putting off-road tires on, a handful of trucks, road tires on a handful of trucks. And it just so happened that every single person that would come over wanted the opposite set of tires on the truck that we picked. So now we have the whole truck ready to go. And the only thing we got to do is figure out whether or not you want aggressive off-road, medium duty on off-road, or just road. And then we'll put the right set of tires on it and get it home.
That's neat. So, you buy these things, you drive away, but like any machine, it needs service, whether it's just regular maintenance or it's, breakdown, right? So do you guys have service at HVNY Imports, like in-house?
Yes. Yeah, we offer in-house service, and we also offer parts for all these vehicles. We also offer a little something different where if it's, within the tri-state, and even then a bit farther out, if you still wanted to play, we could come pick you up. We could service it, and then we could drop it off. So we've done that for all of our customers. People say, hey, you know what? I hear a noise of this. And even if it doesn't check out to be anything, we still come pick it up. We'll look at it and we'll drop it back off.
That's cool. Excellent. So hey, the Subaru, right? The sandbar. Can I go to my local Subaru dealer? So I live somewhere in the Midwest, nowhere close to you. Can I go to my local Subaru dealership and have them work on a sandbar?
If it's a cool one, they'd probably take it on, but they might stay away from it just because of what it is. And it's not something they sell in the States or worry about being able to get parts for it, because it's not something that they carry parts for on a daily. Mm-hmm. But a good mechanic, a local mechanic, should be able to look at this as a small engine and say spark, air, fuel, and be able to fix it just the same. We haven't had anyone call us saying, oh man, our mechanic's saying it's just impossible. We can't do this and can't do it. If they can't find parts at Napa, that makes sense. And we can get you parts shipped overnight if necessary. Or, if we know that the person's buying the truck, we'll suggest, hey, in 8 months to a year, if you want to do a tune-up in the future from that point, buy a tune-up kit. And, we could have it sent to you. So that way, when it's time, you'll have it on the shelf.
That's cool. That's interesting. And then do you have people on your team and your service team that can help support, mechanics that are remote, thousands of miles away? They're like, hey man, I got this issue. I think this is what it is. Right. But want to run it by you. And, oh, by the way, I can't get the part anyway. Can you help me out there?
Absolutely. We have facilitated tons of those types of situations where someone will call us and you can just hear that they're covered in oil and they're upset. They're like, I just don't know where this and this and this. And my partner, Matthew, is the mechanical side of things. I'll transfer over to him and he'll be able to walk somebody through it, usually step by step with a little bit of patience, and be able to fix almost anything over the phone. And we have had a few mechanics call and say, hey, I just can't seem to find parts for any of this. And then we'll direct him to someone who has parts more local in case it's on the other side. And it could take 3 days for parts to get there when there's someone maybe a day away that can get them parts sooner. Yeah.
And that's what I've realized in interviewing all the JDM importers. That's the biggest variable. It's not, hey, yes, we'll sell you a truck, but it's the post sale, which is the biggest value to any buyer out there, is the post sale and the post sale support and parts availability, just because you got to cross reference a lot of stuff. Like you said, hey, you have a Mitsubishi, but like that particular engine is unique, but here in the States, it happens to be utilized in, some type of, obscure tractor or whatever it is, right? Where you've cross-referenced that, it. There's definitely a lot of value in that. So I love to hear that. And that level of reconditioning too is second to none. The fact that you are going that deep into a vehicle, which I think is for the better JDM importers is pretty standard. But the fact that you're going that deep into it to ensure that you have a good quality product is huge.
we're in this. Obviously, it's a business and we want to make money, but we're also in this for happy customers. And probably most secondarily, even above the happy customer, is the Google review, which is necessary to have the happy customer.
Yep.
So we're trying to give you something that has been somewhat restored, has been looked at to the deepest as we can, and then give it to you with the hopes that you're not going to purposely beat the snot out of it, but also have enough fun to where, you'll be able to tell your buddy, hey, I bought this a year ago. We've been having fun in it. I paid this much. And then everyone, oh, wow. Compared to a $15,000, $18,000 quad, a $35,000 side-by-side, a $60,000 pickup truck, these start to rise to the top.
Gotcha. And they make more sense than golf carts, right? And again, back to living in a beach community, we have a ton of golf carts here, and these people pay like 15 to 20 grand for these golf carts. These things are banging. Don't get me wrong. They're cool. They're lifted. Right. They have LED lighting packages, stereos. That is a lot of money for a golf cart to putt around a beach town in, which is why I understand the surfers buy the mini trucks.
Yep. And then not to mention, if they're batteries, you got to replace the batteries every 2 to 3 years in the Northeast, because unless you're keeping them inside, and $20,000 golf cart, you should keep it inside, but some people won't. Yep. And then, the comparisons of 4-wheel drive capabilities. You're not taking that thing in the woods. It doesn't have a cab, no heat, no, the reliability of if you wanted to even just pull a garbage can down to the end of the driveway, that thing might not be able to do.
That's funny, man. So what's the average price of, a mini truck? Obviously they all vary, but what's the average price of what you have on your website right now?
Starting at $6,500 with a tune-up.
Wow. That's reasonable. It's a lot. Now I understand why all the surfers in the beach towns have them versus the golf carts, right? You can have something cooler that's more functional, has a better use case, and saves you, at somewhere around 10 grand at least.
Right. And something that we didn't really get a chance to touch on, but I want to throw in there real quick, is the dump truck, scissor truck, 3-way dump trucks that you can get in a mini truck application. And it's not just a standard bed truck, but you could get a dump truck starting at $7,500. You could get a 3-way dump or a scissor lift, a little bit more than that, usually under 10,000 or starting at under 10,000 for those trucks. But it's just amazing that there's different applications as opposed to, I thought it was just an amazing 4-wheel drive, but it also has a dump. It also, can scissor 6 feet into the air, depending on the model.
That's like, you bring up a great point. These 660cc engines, right, are not only can they handle payloads that are half the vehicle's weight, but now you're talking about hydraulics. So they're also, correct me if I'm wrong, these engines are also powering the hydraulic pumps too.
So some of them, and it's more rare to have a PTO on the motor, but a lot of them are electric over hydraulic separate units.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So it'll be a hydraulic pump and with electric running to that. So it'll be considered electric over hydraulic piston. But, and then you can get the PTO style, and not that we don't like the PTO, but just PTO is one more thing that if it breaks internally, you have to go inside to fix it. Whereas something external is like you could replace the pump, the hydraulic, the motor, and all that without having to touch the motor of the vehicle.
Gotcha. And now are these things 12 volts or 6 volts?
12.
Wow. Okay. So you're strapping in a regular 12 volt small car battery into these things.
Yep. Lawn and garden batteries we're doing.
Lawn and garden, but they're 6 or 12s.
Yeah. So it's a mixture of the two. Let me just double check here.
That's pretty cool, though. We don't have to go too much deeper because we're coming into the end anyway. But
I believe it's a 12.
Gotcha.
I could be mistaken.
That's pretty neat, man. That's cool. It's amazing that they can even power electric pumps, and I mean all these different things that come on these trucks and these different configurations between the trucks, the vans, the cars, like all coming out of just this little compact package with a 660cc engine, which is super cool. But Todd, man, I can't thank you enough for joining me today on the Classic 4x4 podcast. Very appreciated. This is a topic that I am super interested in, and I can't wait till I come and visit you up in Goshen, New York at HVNY Imports and pick up my sandbar, my Subaru sandbar, because that's really the only thing I'll probably fit in.
Chris, we'd love to have you. And thanks for having us today. It was a pleasure. We enjoyed it.
Dude, anytime. And I look forward to crossing paths with you.
I'll talk to you soon.
I am absolutely intrigued by JDM Imports, especially Kei trucks, and I really appreciate Todd Gatto from HVNY Imports joining us today. But stay tuned for our next episode, where we're joined by Mike Antonelli from Riptide 4x4, which is a scout builder who hasn't been around for very long, but has gained a ton of prominence in a very short period of time after he sold one of his builds to Scout Motors.